The morning sun stretched its gentle rays across the sleepy town of Elmsworth, painting the cobblestone streets in gold. The day had only just begun, and yet the town already stirred with quiet motion, shopkeepers flipping open their signs, milkmen unloading glass bottles, and a busker tuning his guitar near the fountain in the square. But in the midst of all this hum of life, one man seemed out of place, Thomas Avery, a quiet man in his late 50s, who walked with his eyes fixed on the ground as if searching for something he'd long lost. Thomas had once been a man of laughter and easy conversation. He had owned a small photography studio that had been the heart of the town for decades. Children grew up seeing their milestones captured by his camera, couples trusted him to freeze their happiest days, and even the mayor had once said no event felt complete until Thomas took a picture. But that was years ago, before his wife, Margaret, passed away after a long illness. When she left, the light in Thomas's life dimmed, and his camera gathered dust on the shelf. Smiles became harder to find, both in his pictures and in his own reflection. Every day, Thomas followed the same pattern: breakfast alone, a slow walk to the park, a visit to the cafe where he ordered one black coffee and sat by the window, staring out as life continued without him. People in town would greet him kindly, but he'd nod faintly and retreat into silence. Most accepted that grief had carved something in him that time alone couldn't fill. It was on one such morning that Thomas noticed a young woman sitting outside the cafe, sketchbook open on her lap. She had curly auburn hair tied in a messy bun and wore a worn denim jacket decorated with pins and doodles. Her name, as he later overheard, was Lily, an art student who had recently moved into town. Unlike Thomas, she seemed to see the world in colors that others missed. Every day, she'd sit with her tea, sketching strangers, dogs, flowers, whatever caught her fancy. At first, Thomas avoided sitting near her. She was always smiling, and her laughter carried across the cafe terrace like music. He wasn't sure whether it made him nostalgic or uncomfortable. But one windy morning, when the cafe was full, the only empty seat left was across from her. "Would you mind if I sit here?" he asked, his voice low, polite but distant. "Of course not," she replied cheerfully. "You're Mr. Avery, right? The photographer?" Thomas blinked, surprised. "I was, yes. But how did you?" "Oh, everyone talks about you. Mrs. Palmer at the bakery showed me the photo you took of her wedding 30 years ago. Said you made everyone look like they were glowing." Thomas managed a small, hesitant smile. "That was a long time ago." "Well," Lily said, taking a sip of tea, "good art doesn't get old." They shared that table for several days afterward, sometimes exchanging words, sometimes just sitting quietly. She would sketch while he watched the street, both absorbed in their own worlds. But slowly, their conversations began to stretch longer. She told him about her dreams of becoming an illustrator, how she saw stories in ordinary people. He, in turn, began sharing little pieces of his past, how Margaret used to pose in front of the camera to help him test the light, how laughter used to echo through his studio when kids came for portraits. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Do you ever still take pictures?" Thomas shook his head. "Not in years. The cameras, well, it's just a thing now." "That's a shame," she said softly. "You still look like someone who sees stories in faces." Her words lingered with him that night as he sat in his small living room, surrounded by faded frames of happier times. He found himself glancing at the camera case on the shelf. Dust clung to it like cobwebs of memory. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he picked it up. The leather felt familiar, like shaking hands with an old friend. He turned it over in his palms, the weight of it stirring something inside, a mix of sorrow and longing. The next morning, he took it with him to the cafe. Lily's eyes lit up when she saw it. "You brought it?" He smiled faintly. "I thought maybe I'd take a picture of the town again. Just to see if I still remember how." And so he did. The fountain glimmered in his lens, children played by the benches, pigeons fluttered through the air. He snapped photos quietly, rediscovering the rhythm of focus, the dance of light and shadow. It was as if the town itself smiled for him. When he showed the first few prints to Lily later that week, she beamed. "These are beautiful, Thomas. You caught something alive in them." Her enthusiasm was contagious. Slowly, his walks grew longer. He began greeting people again, asking to take their portraits. The butcher, the postman, the florist, everyone agreed gladly. "It's good to see you back with your camera, Mr. Avery," they'd say. And with each photograph, something inside him began to thaw. One day, as autumn leaves painted the park in hues of amber and red, Thomas found Lily sitting on a bench, unusually quiet. Her sketchbook was closed, her expression somber. "Something wrong?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "My grandmother's in the hospital. She raised me, and now she's really sick. I've been trying to visit her, but it's a long trip and I can't afford to go often." Thomas felt a tug in his heart. "I'm sorry to hear that." Lily nodded, eyes glistening. She always said the best thing you can give someone is a smile. That it costs nothing but can mean everything. I didn't really understand it until now. That night, Thomas thought about her words for a long time. He remembered Margaret's laughter, the way she used to light up a room just by smiling. He realized he hadn't truly smiled in years, not the kind that came from the soul. The next morning, he returned to the cafe early and found Lily already there. Without saying much, he handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a train ticket and a photograph, a portrait he had taken of her sitting in the cafe, smiling as she sketched. The picture glowed with warmth and life. "Thomas, I can't accept this," she said, voice trembling. "Yes, you can. Go see her. Bring her your smile." Tears filled her eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Thank you. I'll never forget this." When Lily left for her trip, the cafe felt a little emptier, but Thomas found himself smiling anyway. He walked through town, camera in hand, greeting old friends and taking photos of moments he once overlooked: children sharing ice cream, an elderly couple holding hands, a shopkeeper sweeping leaves from the doorstep. Every picture was a small reminder that beauty still existed in the world if one only cared to look. A week later, a letter arrived for him. It was from Lily. Inside was a photo, one she had taken of her grandmother smiling from her hospital bed, eyes bright despite the frailty. The note beneath read, "She said it's the happiest she's felt in months. Thank you for reminding me to share my smile." Thomas held the photo to his chest, feeling something warm and unexplainable rise within him. For the first time in years, he felt that Margaret would have been proud. Months passed, and winter blanketed Elmsworth in white. The town prepared for the annual Christmas fair, and Thomas decided to do something special. With the mayor's permission, he set up a photo booth in the square, a simple backdrop of twinkling lights and a banner that read, "The Gift of a Smile." He invited everyone, families, children, even shy passers-by, to come and have their photos taken for free. "Just one rule," he'd say, "you have to smile." At first, people were hesitant. But soon, laughter and joy filled the air as people posed, giggled, and hugged. Each photo he took captured not perfection but warmth, crinkled eyes, crooked grins, genuine joy. By evening, the booth was surrounded by people waiting for their turn. Lily had returned by then, her grandmother's health much improved. She helped hand out prints, beaming as brightly as ever. When the fair ended, Thomas hung the photos on a large board near the fountain. It became a wall of smiles, a living mosaic of kindness and community. People stopped to look, pointing and laughing when they found themselves or someone they knew. The mayor approached Thomas and said, "You've given this town something special, Mr. Avery. You've given it its heart back." Thomas looked at the board, at the endless sea of smiling faces, and then at Lily standing nearby. "No," he said softly, "they gave it to me. As the snow fell gently that night, Thomas felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He realized that a smile, simple, sincere, freely given, was more powerful than any photograph. It could bridge loneliness, mend grief, and breathe light into the darkest corners of life. He turned his camera toward Lily and lifted it. "One more for the collection," he said. She grinned, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Make sure it's a good one." "It already is," he replied. The shutter clicked, freezing the moment forever, a symbol of two souls who had found healing through kindness and the quiet magic of a smile. Long after that winter passed, the board of photographs remained by the fountain. It became a tradition for townsfolk to add new pictures every year, new faces, new smiles, new stories. Visitors would often ask who started it, and someone would point to the elderly man still sitting in the cafe with his camera, sipping black coffee and smiling softly. Thomas never stopped taking pictures again. But more importantly, he never stopped smiling. For he had learned that the greatest gift one could give or receive wasn't captured in a frame, it lived in the gentle curve of a smile, shared freely and remembered always.